Developing right now on Morning News Now, an emotional homecoming for a 5-year-old whose photos became a symbol of the federal immigration crackdown. This morning, that boy and his father back in Minneapolis after a judge ordered them released from custody in Texas. Meanwhile, another federal judge declining to block ICE operations in Minneapolis as the Trump administration and Republicans look to de-escalate tensions across the city.
President Trump has even acknowledged that ICE has made mistakes. Do you think within that context any changes need to be made to ICE and the way it's operating on the
Yes, look, I think President Trump was right to acknowledge that.
New video of a story we brought you last week about 2 women who say they helped an ICE agent having a seizure while they were detained. We're going to bring you the latest. Also this morning, a shutdown showdown on Capitol Hill, now entering day 3 as Democrats vow to block a bill that includes funding for Homeland Security. And in Texas, a stunning upset for Republicans after a Democrat flipped a state Senate seat in a reliably red district. Plus, millions more pages of records from the Epstein investigation released by the Justice Department. We'll have an update from Washington. Flu deaths on the rise across the country, the new numbers from the CDC, and what doctors want parents to know. And history and politics taking center stage on music's biggest night. That's right, last night's Grammy Awards show was one for the books. We're going to show you the most memorable moments, including the biggest winners, incredible performances, and the artists who used the spotlight to highlight the unrest in Minneapolis. Good morning. Thanks for joining us on this Monday. I'm Joe Fryer. Savannah is on assignment covering the Winter Olympics. We begin with a Minnesota preschooler who is finally back home this morning after he was detained alongside his father by immigration agents in Minneapolis. A federal judge ordered the release of 5-year-old Liam Conejo Ramos and his dad on Saturday while their immigration case proceeds through the court system. They were being held at an ICE detention facility in Texas. Last month, images showing the boy in a blue bunny hat and Spider-Man backpack sparked international outrage. He was photographed when he was taken into custody on his way home from school. The Department of Homeland Security says it was conducting a targeted operation to arrest Liam's father when the boy was detained. The spokesperson said Liam was abandoned, that the child's mother refused to claim custody of him even after officers assured her that she would not be arrested. That's something Liam's mother denies. She said federal agents tried to use her son as bait to get her to come out of the home. DHS says the father requested that Liam stay with him. For more on all this, let's bring in NBC's Alice Barr. Alice, good morning. So that federal judge issued a scathing court order demanding Liam and his father's release. He described the circumstances under their detention as bereft of human decency. What else are we learning?
Good morning, Joe. That federal judge who ordered the release of Liam and his father did not hold back, slamming the Trump administration's immigration crackdown as a, quote, ill-conceived and incompetently implemented government pursuit of daily deportation quotas, apparently even if it requires traumatizing children. Over the weekend, Texas Congressman Joaquin Castro traveled with Liam and his dad from the Dilley Detention Center in Texas, where they were being held for nearly 2 weeks, back to Minneapolis. And Minnesota Congresswoman Ilhan Omar then shared this photo, writing, "Welcome home, Liam." Attorneys representing the family say they entered the U.S. within the past couple of years seeking asylum from Ecuador, that they had booked an appointment using the CBP One app set up under the Biden administration to create a more orderly way to process asylum claims, and that they were, quote, following all the established protocols, pursuing their claim for asylum, showing up for their court hearings, and pose no safety or flight risk, adding that they should never have been detained.
So, Alice, I mean, what happened to Liam is putting a spotlight on children in ICE custody. And his father were held in the facility you just mentioned, south of San Antonio. What else are we learning about that facility?
So this is far from the only case of a child being held at that detention center, and Congressman Castro is promising to keep working to bring all the children home, as there's been an increase in families that have been taken into custody. The Department of Homeland Security has also now confirmed 2 detainees at the center came down with measles 2 days ago, and that ICE Health Services moved to immediately quarantine and control the spread. They said they've ceased all movement within the facility and that their quarantining anyone suspected of making contact with those who were infected, saying that medical staff is taking care of the detainees and making sure they have what they need.
Alice, over the weekend, a different federal judge, this one appointed by former President Joe Biden, rejected Minnesota's bid to just try and end President Trump's immigration operation in the state. What was the reasoning here?
So essentially, this Biden-appointed judge found that the state's legal case was too weak to grant an injunction, saying that there was evidence that ICE and CBP agents had engaged in racial profiling, in excessive use of force, and other harmful actions, but that while it had disrupted daily life for Minnesotans, that there was not enough evidence to state that the state of Minnesota was being punished or unfairly targeted by the federal government, that wasn't enough to justify blocking the surge altogether.
All right. Alice Barr reporting from Washington. Alice, thank you so much. We have an update to another story we brought you last week out of Minnesota. The Department of Homeland Security is pushing back on claims made by two women who say that while they were detained by ICE, they helped a federal agent who was having a medical emergency. It happened on January 22nd in the city of Brooklyn Park, just outside of Minneapolis. Dashcam video shows the moment federal authorities descended on a car, taking Tippy Amundsen and Heather Zeman into custody. The video does not capture what led up to their arrest. A DHS spokesperson says the women had been obstructing operations by Border Patrol and that they, quote, disobeyed law enforcement commands and ignored warnings, resulting in their arrest. The women maintain they were not breaking the law. Now, what happened next is what's getting so much attention. Amundsen and Zeman joined us last week here on Morning News Now. They told us they were handcuffed in the back of an SUV en route to a federal detention center with 3 federal agents in the vehicle. Then one agent started to have what they believed to be a seizure.
I saw him start to lean back, and then he said out loud, well, not really loud, very softly, that he was not feeling very well. And then his arms started to shake.
So I quickly asked them to pull over, uncuff me, and let me help him, because we could hear his tongue and the fluids in his mouth begin to sound like they were going to be aspirated into his body, and I was worried that he was going to stop breathing. I knew from minimal training that I have as being on the emergency response team when I was a kindergarten teacher, that I needed to get him into the recovery position, keep him warm and keep him calm. So they did that. They pulled over, they uncuffed me, let me run around the vehicle. They began to uncuff Heather, and then I got to his side and I told him that he was going to be okay. I had to move his service weapon from his hip to the front of his body to be able to get him into the recovery position. And then I just held his head up so that he could have a clear airway. I spoke to him and I asked him his name. I told him that he was going to be safe and that I was going to stay there until EMS arrived.
Late last week, 3 days after NBC News reached out, the Department of Homeland Security responded with a statement offering a different account of what happened. A DHS spokesperson said, quote, while driving back for processing, one of the agents in the vehicle began to feel unwell and experienced a medical emergency. These 2 women lied to law enforcement, stating they were nurses when they were not, and they remained secured in the vehicle. Agents immediately pulled over to render assistance and called 911 for medical support. The fire department and EMS arrived on scene within minutes, and the agent was treated. In response to that statement, Amundsen and Zeman say they never stated they were nurses. As for the claim they remained secured in the vehicle, they point to this video of the medical emergency. It was taken from a camera outside of a police precinct building. They obtained the video through an open records request, and it was verified by NBC News. It's tough to see clearly who's who in the video, but an attorney for the women says it shows Amundsen standing outside of the SUV on the passenger side, then shows her uncuffed, hands-free, being escorted to another vehicle. I spoke with that attorney, Ed Shaw, who calls the DHS statement disgusting. He says the women went out of their way to help the agent, maybe even saved his life, and says they're still getting trashed by their own government. The women say they were handcuffed again, then taken to a federal detention center and given citations. Their attorney says they're still waiting to see if they'll face charges for obstructing federal officers. We did ask DHS for an update on the agent's condition. The agency did not provide one. Funding for ICE is at the heart of a partial government shutdown, which continues this morning. Congress is working through the passage of a long-term funding plan. The holdup does come after the Senate changed the package because of these concerns over President Trump's mass deportation operation and the deaths of 2 American citizens during those ICE operations in Minneapolis. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Julie Sirkin joins us now. Julie, does it seem likely this partial shutdown will last long? Just what are we expecting today?
Joe, it'll last most likely until tomorrow. That is because Speaker Johnson's initial plan of having Democrats help provide the votes to pass this package, moving it along in a process known as on suspension, meaning Democrats and Republicans would need to put up 2/3 of the votes for this to pass. The thing is, though, Johnson experienced a wrinkle when Leader Jeffries, the top Democrat in the House, said Democrats will not provide the votes. So Johnson had to go to Plan B, meaning this process will get slowed down. And they're going to have an initial meeting today at 4 o'clock to see if they can move forward. Speaker Johnson told Kristen Welker that he expects this package to pass out of the House by tomorrow. Take a listen.
I'm confident that we'll do it at least by Tuesday. We have a logistical challenge of getting everyone in town, and because of the conversation I had with Hakeem Jeffries, I know that we've got to pass a rule and probably do this mostly on our own. Our intention is by Tuesday to fund all agencies of the federal government except for that one, and then we'll have 2 weeks of good faith negotiations to figure it out.
Really quickly, Joe, how did we get here? Remember, on Friday, the Senate was able to pass this package. They passed a continuing resolution for 2 weeks to fund the Department of Homeland Security on status quo spending levels because Democrats raised concerns about the situation in Minneapolis. And it wasn't just Democrats. Republicans joined them, and that is why they were able to pass the package they did on Friday. And that is why we're in a partial shutdown right now.
Yeah, so, Julie, I mean, just at this moment where we're at, I know it's fluid. What are we hearing from Democrats? What is it they are specifically calling for?
Well, Democrats in the House are frustrated. And I'll tell you, we picked up on Friday that it seems like Leader Schumer, the top Democrat in the Senate, did not have close coordination with Hakeem Jeffries in the House. He even told me that he worked with Jeffries just on the timing of the funding period for DHS, those 2 weeks, so that Democrats can negotiate reforms. What they're looking for, all Border Patrol agents to be unmasked, to wear body cam footage, to have more coordination with state and local law enforcement to avert the situation, the tragic shootings that we saw happen in Minneapolis. But that's not enough for House Democrats because they are still supposed to fund for the next 2 weeks by that continuing resolution status quo funding for the DHS. Take a listen to what Ro Khanna, one Democrat, said was his reasoning for why he's voting against the package.
I'm a firm no, and I'm going to advocate with colleagues that they vote no. I just don't see how in good conscience Democrats can vote for continuing ICE funding when they're killing American citizens, when there's no provision to repeal the tripling of the budget. I hope my colleagues will say no.
Now, despite that, some Democrats are expected to vote for this bill. So I think Speaker Johnson's prediction of at least by tomorrow is probably right. Americans can look forward to the lights turning back on.
All right, Julie, we know you're going to stay on that throughout the day. While we have you, another topic. The president announced plans to actually shut down the Kennedy Center in Washington for renovation for quite a while. What more can you tell us?
Yeah, starting on July 4th, America's 250th birthday, the president posting in a Truth Social overnight saying that after determining renovations and how long it would take, how extensive they need to be, something that we weren't really sure he was considering over the past year, Joe, he consulted a team of experts, musicians, he said, as well as construction experts who told him that the best course of action is to shut down the Kennedy Center that the president has renamed, although not officially, the Trump Kennedy Center, to complete these extensive renovations over the next 2 years. It comes, of course, after the president fired the board of the Kennedy Center, replacing it with members that are favorable to him. Again, changing the name, at least in message, not officially. And of course, we saw the screening of the Melania movie, the First Lady's movie premiere ahead of this weekend with the president's cabinet in attendance, a lot of his allies as well. So this just marks another point of escalation as the president has tried to change different buildings, including the White House, and now, of course, targeting the Kennedy Center. Joe?
All right. Julie Sirkin, a lot to cover. Thank you so much. A massive election upset in Texas is setting off alarm bells for Republicans across the country. We're talking about a state legislative special election. Democrat Taylor Ramett easily defeated Republican Lee Wamsgans 57 to 43%. This was a contest to fill a vacant state Senate seat in a district near Fort Worth. So why is this significant? Well, historically, it is a deeply conservative district, one that President Trump won by more than 17 points in the 2024 presidential election. Rahmet is a 33-year-old labor union leader and a veteran. He will now serve out the remainder of the term until early next year. Both he and Wamsgans are registered to run in the November election. For more on this, let's bring in NBC News senior national politics reporter Jonathan Allen. John, good morning. This is a big swing, a 31-point difference between Mr. Trump's performance in 2024 and this race just over a year later. Wamsgans received an endorsement from President Trump and also some other prominent Texas Republicans. So what are the main reasons voters embraced a Democrat in that district?
Good morning, Joe. I think the biggest thing here is that simply Republicans are not showing up to the polls, that they are not energized. And on the flip side, what you've seen is Democrats are super energized. This is very reminiscent of 2018, the first midterm for President Trump in his first term, where you saw tremendous Democratic enthusiasm, tremendous Democratic activism. Democrats are not having to do anything to get their voters out. A special election tends to have lower turnout anyway, but the Democrats are showing up. This is a district, as you mentioned, 17 points for Donald Trump, and at the same time, flips here by a similar margin to the Democrat. It's certainly a wake-up call, but let's listen to what Taylor Rahmet had to say about why he won.
I think the factor is that this isn't red versus blue. This is right versus wrong. This is about public school funding. This is about helping working folks. This is about lowering costs. This is about everyday working folks.
And this is what the Democrats have been talking about across the country. When he talks about everyday working folks, really wants to talk about affordability, which is a consistent theme since last November's election through this special election in Texas.
And John, even before the election, the contest was seen by some as perhaps a bellwether for this year's midterms. We should keep in mind special elections are different from general elections, from midterms. Still, with this result, how much of a warning is it for Republican lawmakers?
It's a huge warning. I don't know that this district would have necessarily been a bellwether, except for that it's the only election that was happening on this day. It is a runoff election carried over from a previous election where there were 3 candidates, 2 Republicans, and nobody got 50% of the vote. But what you saw here was basically the Republican Party not coming together and not showing up. And because it flipped in this direction and looked like it was going to flip in this direction, it is seen as a bellwether. You heard Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick say that this is a wake-up call. You heard Lee Wamsgans, the losing candidate, say this is a wake-up call. I don't think there's anybody in the Republican Party who doesn't see it that way.
Rahmet ran on the idea of holding the Trump administration accountable. We just heard from him there. I mean, after the win, he told reporters this win goes to everyday working people. How do you think lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are going to interpret that? How are they going to look at this contest ahead of their elections in November? Just what are the big political takeaways?
I mean, look, what we've seen from Republicans in Congress is that they are occasionally willing to very slightly stand away from Donald Trump and then get hammered by him anyway. So I think that Republicans are unlikely to, at least in Congress, really change their behavior. Certainly not until after their own primaries in this year. But through that period between the primaries and the general election, you may see them distance themselves a little bit more from Trump on occasion. Democrats, I think, are going to continue with a message that's winning for them right now.
All right. John Allen, good to have you with us. Thank you so much. Thanks. New information is coming to light following the release of millions of new documents from the Epstein files. The Department of Justice released the latest batch, the biggest by far, on Friday. The documents included a draft federal indictment against Epstein and 3 co-conspirators. NBC's Melanie Zanona has the details.
The DOJ's latest batch of Epstein files revealing new connections between the late convicted sex offender and other powerful men. One of the documents appears to be a 32-count draft indictment prepared against Epstein before the non-prosecution agreement he reached in 2007. It reveals the government was looking to charge 3 co-conspirators alongside Epstein with a conspiracy to procure women under the age of 18 between 2001 and 2005. Their names are redacted, but they are described as assistants who helped schedule appointments, make calls, pay victims, and more. Some new images also appear to show Britain's former Prince Andrew kneeling over an unidentified female. There are no details provided about the circumstances or timing of the photos, and there's no indication of wrongdoing in these images. He has denied prior accusations of sexual abuse by one of Epstein's victims and has never been criminally charged. The DOJ also posted, then temporarily removed without explanation, a spreadsheet of complaints made to the FBI, including unverified allegations about both President Trump and former President Bill Clinton. Per the document, the FBI determined some of those claims were found to be not credible. Trump and Clinton have denied any wrongdoing, and they have not been accused by authorities. The DOJ says the files contain untrue and sensationalist claims against President Trump that are unfounded and false.
We did not protect President Trump. We didn't protect or not protect anybody.
A group of Epstein survivors criticized the DOJ for heavily redacting some of the files, saying in a statement, "This is not over. We will not stop until the truth is fully revealed and every perpetrator is finally held accountable."
Our thanks to Melanie Zanona for that report. Some of the Epstein documents have been heavily redacted. The Justice Department said the White House had, quote, no oversight of the review of these new files. At least 2 congressmen have already requested to see unredacted documents. Well, it might be a new month, but the top headline in the weather remains the same. It's cold. It was another weekend of heavy snow and dangerously frigid conditions. The Carolinas still working to dig their way out from a historic storm that dumped up to 20 inches of snow. Right now, tens of millions of people are under winter weather alerts. The good news, that number is actually down from this last Friday, but still, you need to bundle up because temperatures are expected to take another tumble. Meteorologist Andrea Romero joins us now with her own projection for what to expect on this Groundhog Day. We know the folks in weather and climate don't like the groundhog that much. But Andrea, what can you tell us?
He wants to take our job, Joe.
Yes.
Well, actually, what we are experiencing is that cold weather that continues to grip the eastern coast, mostly of the United States, as we can see, stretching all the way from the northeast into parts of the southeast. 64 million people are impacted, but like Joe said, we are talking about that number being significantly less. Last Friday, we were at 200 million people. So we are trending in the right direction. We're looking at the extreme cold right now with temperatures that are in the single digits. In Cincinnati, we have 6 degrees right now with a wind chill of 6, but we're looking at Elkins, a wind chill of -1 degrees. And here in New York City, 17 degrees, but it feels like 9 degrees. So that cold is stretching along the northern tier of the country into the mid-Atlantic and especially into the southeast. That's where the cold is really more dramatic. We're talking about extreme cold. We have those extreme cold warnings up along the eastern coast, and we're expecting many record low temperatures today. Right now, we're looking at wind chills that are near 30 in Tampa, 19 in Daytona Beach and Melbourne, 16 in Fort Myers, 26 degrees. So it's really cold down there. You have to bundle up and try to limit the time that you're exposed to those extremely cold temperatures. Now, the good news is that it won't be as harsh as it was last week. We're looking at temperatures that will probably break the freezing point in many areas. Temperatures that are still going to be below average, 10 to 20 degrees below average. But tomorrow, they're going to be 5 to 10 degrees below average. So it will warm up slightly. But of course, we're still dealing with frigid temperatures. So you still want to bundle up. Now, as far as any precipitation, we do have some February systems that we're monitoring. First, we have a cold front that's crossing the Central Plains today, bringing a chance of some snow in the Great Lakes and the Appalachians. Then we have another system that'll be a little bit more potent. We can have some snow possibly to the north, cold rain in the south. That's going to be for tomorrow into Wednesday. Then that system is going to be pushing offshore. So we do have a chance of 1 to 3 inches along the Ohio Valley, parts of West Virginia, and a little bit of rainfall, maybe up to ½ an inch in parts of the Gulf Coast states. But it's not a lot of precipitation. It's going to be mostly the cold that we're going to be talking about, with the exception of the west. The west is warmer than average, and we are expecting sunny and dry conditions in that part of the country.
All right. Andrea, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Welcome.
We have some news from inside the NBC News family to bring you. The mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie has been reported missing in Arizona. The Pima County Sheriff's Department said on Sunday that Nancy Guthrie was last seen in her home on Saturday night, shortly before 10 p.m. She was reported missing by her family around noon on Sunday. Search and rescue teams are out looking for Nancy, who is 84 years old. The sheriff said there were aspects of the scene at her home that caused, quote, grave concern. Authorities say they do not know if foul play is a factor in her disappearance, but they are not ruling it out at this time. A statement from the Guthrie family says, quote, "We can confirm this is a missing persons case, and the family is working closely with local law enforcement. They're urging people to contact the Pima County Sheriff's Department if they have any information," adding they are grateful for the outreach, thoughts, and prayers. No doubt all of us here at NBC News are thinking of our colleague Savannah and her entire family and keeping them in our prayers. Much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, it could be a game changer for the NFL. The new turf rules just introduced by the league meant to protect players from injury. Up first after the break, we've got new developments out of the Middle East. Israel's government saying a key border crossing into Gaza is back open to traffic after nearly a year. We'll be right back. We're back now with news out of the Middle East. The border crossing between the Gaza Strip and Egypt reopened earlier today. The Rafah crossing has been closed for nearly a year, cutting off a major point of entry for humanitarian aid. Now, this limited reopening is part of the early stages of the second phase of the Israel-Hamas peace plan. NBC News international correspondent Matt Bradley is in Tel Aviv and joins us with the latest. Matt, good morning. As we said, this is a limited reopening, so who is allowed to pass through?
Yeah, it sounds as though it's mostly going to be patients traveling on foot, those seeking medical care. Now, according to Egyptian officials speaking to Reuters, there should be about 50 patients from the Gaza Strip allowed to enter Egypt today. But so far, according to officials that we've spoken to in the northern part of the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt, they said that the Israelis have so far approved only 5. So, Joe, I mean, this is a really important step, as you mentioned, in showing that this ceasefire is moving from something like just a ceasefire to something a bit more permanent. But at the same time, this is a baby step because, as you mentioned, there are sky-high restrictions on who can go in and out of the Gaza Strip. And now it looks as though, even though this is the first time we're seeing this border truly open in nearly 2 years, the restrictions are so harsh that we're only going to see a trickle of movement back and forth. Now, still, there's a lot of optimism about what this means going forward, and not just because of what I mentioned about this shows a clear progression in that ceasefire. This could become the first opportunity for a lot of those Palestinians who had lived in Gaza, who had left the Strip over the course of the past 2 years, to finally return. And there's also a lot of hopes, not realized today, but a lot of hopes that this will open a new flood of much-needed aid for food and fuel, medical care into the Gaza Strip. Aid agencies and advocacy groups have said that while the ceasefire, which started in October, has allowed for more aid to get into Gaza, they said that it's still woefully inadequate for the desperate needs.
Yeah, and Matt, this does beg the question, is Egypt prepared for the influx of people who need medical care?
That's a very good question, and one that I think that when we're talking about, people moving in and out and ambulances moving around, we're going to start to see a little trickle of people who are moving into Egypt for medical care. That doesn't look so far like it's overwhelming at all. Like I said, we heard from these officials in the northern part of the Sinai Peninsula. By the way, that is where the Rafah crossing connects to Egypt in the Sinai Peninsula. That's kind of where the border between Israel and Egypt and the Gaza Strip sits. He was saying that, this is still very limited, just 5 people. So it doesn't look like the Egyptian health system needs to worry about the influx of a huge number of desperate patients quite yet, because Israel is doing the work for them of limiting the number of patients who are allowed to cross the border. Again, we don't know how this is going to change. We were supposed to hear that the border was opening yesterday, but instead we heard that it was more of a trial phase for opening the border. Now that we've had this first day here, it's another baby step toward what could resemble something like the free movement of goods in and out of the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, so if this is the beginning of the second phase of the ceasefire, what are some of the other major steps in this phase 2?
Great question, Joe. I wish I had a solid answer for you, and that's one of the reasons why this is such a tenuous deal. Because unlike phase 1, where we saw hostages held by Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad exchanged for Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails, we saw the Israelis move back to a very specific line called the Yellow Line, where they've remained for the most part for the past couple of months. And we saw Hamas finally giving over all of the dead bodies of those hostages. Those were very discreet, very obvious steps in a plan that went from one step to the other, even though there were lots of disputes and violations. This second phase of the ceasefire includes no specific timeline. It doesn't have any quid pro quo between Hamas and the Israelis to mark the progress. In many ways, the opening of the Rafah border crossing that we're seeing today is the last real tangible step that we're going to be seeing in phase 2, one that will be recognized by all parties involved, something that you can kind of hang your hat on and say, this is working. From now on, we're in uncharted territory, and it's unclear exactly how this ceasefire is supposed to progress from here.
All right, Matt Bradley in Tel Aviv. Matt, thank you so much. Coming up, staggering new numbers from health officials. Pediatric deaths from the flu on the rise across America. And doctors warn the peak of flu season is still ahead. What parents should know next on Morning News Now. We are back with a concerning new report about the impact of the flu. On Friday, new CDC data revealed 52 kids have died from the flu so far this season. The majority of those children were not vaccinated. The report also says children are being hospitalized with the flu at a higher rate than we've seen in 15 years. And experts warn that we're not even at the peak of the season yet. For more on this recent report, we're joined now by NBC News health and medical reporter Erica Edwards. Erica, good morning. Good to have you with us. I mean, these numbers tell us that the 2024 to 2025 flu season was the deadliest on record for kids. By the same time last year, it was 47 children who had died. Now, many doctors are worried we could be on track for an even deadlier season this year. What else did we learn from the CDC's report?
Hey, Joe, good morning. Well, mainly we learned that the flu season is not done with us yet, right? We had that late December surge in flu, and then we had a bit of a lull after the holidays. Now we're starting to see cases ticking up again. And right now we're seeing a new strain of the flu emerging, a B strain, and that's starting to pop up in more places. And the most important part of the report, as you alluded to, was the fact that the vast majority of these kids who have sadly died so far of the flu this year, 90% had not received the flu shot. And because we're now starting to see that uptick again, experts say, believe it or not, there's still time to get that shot. It might not prevent you from catching the flu, but it certainly will greatly reduce the chances of getting severely ill and dying from the illness. Joe?
Yeah, and that's one of the fears here is so many kids are getting severely ill as these vaccination rates continue to decline. Let's look at some numbers here. As of January 17th, less than half of kids, that's folks in the 6-month to 17-year-old range, were vaccinated this season, 45.1%. Do we know why fewer kids are getting the flu shot?
You know, this is a trend that we've been seeing really since the pandemic. In 2019, 64% of kids had received that annual flu shot compared to that 45% that you just mentioned. And now this is a trend, obviously, we're seeing with all childhood vaccinations. Fewer parents are opting to get their kids vaccinated against a lot of childhood illnesses, measles, polio, and other really vaccine preventable illnesses. Joe?
So as you continue to report on this, and of course it's not just flu, but as you just mentioned, measles, I know you're speaking with doctors and medical experts. What is it they're most concerned about as we brace for a second wave of this flu season?
You know, they worry most about complacency, right? The impression that the flu just isn't something that people need to be concerned about. But we know from previous flu seasons that about half of kids who die of the flu have underlying health problems, right? And that makes them more susceptible to severe complications from the flu. But it means that the other half of kids were perfectly healthy before they ever caught the flu and sadly died from it. Joe?
All right, Erica Edwards, we know you'll stay on this. Thank you so much. For a lot of people, dogs aren't just pets, they're family. But some dogs go above and beyond, stepping into real-life hero roles. From tracking suspects to keeping communities safe, these canines are on the front line of law enforcement. NBC News Chief Justice and National Affairs correspondent Kelly O'Donnell takes a look at the intense training that prepares man's best friend to protect and serve.
At times of catastrophe and chaos, scenes of danger where critical evidence is at risk, or high-profile national events from the Super Bowl to Inauguration Day, a special kind of detective goes to work. Bravery with a bark.
Good girl.
An hour outside Washington, D.C. in rural Virginia, a mission begins at the ATF National Canine Training Center, where months of coursework bring together handler and canine partner.
It's a very, very strong bond. Most police officers work 12-hour shifts. They're with their dog more than their family. They're a loyal partner.
For the Department of Justice, ATF leads this training for a range of federal agencies, plus state and local departments across the country. Dogs on the job typically for 8 or 9 years.
You can see when they start going to work, they're enjoying it.
These dogs are headed for 2 distinct career paths. Some are trained to detect explosives, while others will work to find ignitable liquids. Tracking things like bombs, bullets, guns, and evidence at arson scenes. This program uses only Labrador retrievers, ideal, trainers say, for their work ethic, people skills, and that incredible nose.
We introduce the target odor. In this case, it's black powder, and the dog sniffs the container with the target odor and is rewarded with food.
Repetition and reward through a series of exercises. Oh, this one alerted right there. What does that mean? There's something in there?
So that means that there's an explosive odor in that can.
Part of the training challenge, preparing these dogs to master an extensive range of target substances. ATF says that could include up to 19,000 explosives formulas.
If the dog only finds a limited number of explosives, then it gives you this false sense that the dog is doing a great job, but it won't find every threat.
Training camp does include time for rest and fun. But unlike your family pet, there is no set dinner time. Instead, they receive their complete daily diet in the form of a reward, hand-fed by their handler throughout the day.
And every time the dog finds something, it gets a handful of food. So it's a very, very strong motivation.
Trainers find motivation seeing the real-world results.
When you get that phone call that my dog found the weapon that was used to murder a police officer, you just can't put that into words.
A dog's life, guided by loyalty, public service, and well-earned rewards. Kelly O'Donnell, NBC News, Front Royal, Virginia.
Coming up, Grok unblocked, one country lifting its ban on Elon Musk's controversial chatbot, but under strict conditions. Your Money Minute is next on Morning News Now. Welcome back to Wall Street Now with some of the biggest financial headlines of the day, starting with a special government request from Elon Musk's SpaceX. NBC News business and economy reporter Allie Canal has your Money Minute. Good morning.
Good morning, Joe. That's right. Elon Musk's SpaceX has asked the Federal Communications Commission for approval to launch up to 1 million solar-powered satellites. The goal to use the sun's energy to help power AI data centers from space. In its filing, the company called space-based computing the most efficient way to meet surging AI demand, though some experts say that number is likely just a starting point for negotiations. The request comes as the space race gets more crowded, with roughly 15,000 satellites already in orbit. And sticking with Elon Musk, Indonesia has conditionally lifted its ban on Grok, the AI chatbot from Musk's company xAI. The government says xAI promised new safeguards to prevent misuse following a flood of non-consensual sexualized AI images, including of minors. Officials stress the ban can be reinstated, and here in the U.S., California's Attorney General is also investigating the deepfakes. And from AI to sneaker hype, Costco members lined up for an exclusive Nike Dunk collab with Kirkland, the wholesale giant's in-house brand. The $135 sneakers quickly resold online for hundreds and in some cases thousands. According to multiple outlets, the drop hit select stores Friday in New York, California, Oregon, and Washington, with resale prices as high as $5,000 on sites like StockX and eBay. I mean, it is crazy, these resale sites, and the sneaker craze, too.
Well, the sneaker craze, definitely. You can't buy those in bulk, though, unlike the
exactly.
paper towels.
Bulk toilet paper and paper towels.
Right.
And the sneakers a little bit more
The
exclusive.
shoes, you're lucky to get one pair.
Yes.
All right, Allie, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Coming up, making a statement, some of music's biggest names using the Grammy spotlight to speak out against ICE in the wake of the unrest in Minnesota. We're going to have the highlights next. This is Morning News Now. We're back now with a look at last night's Grammy Awards. It was a huge night for Bad Bunny, who also will headline the Super Bowl halftime show on Sunday. He took home the night's biggest prize for Album of the Year, making Grammys history as the first Spanish album to win that award. The Puerto Rican singer also won Best Música Urbana album. Like many artists Sunday night, he delivered a message condemning ICE during his acceptance speech, which earned him a standing ovation from the Los Angeles crowd. Olivia Dean won the Best New Artist trophy. The Man I Need singer was emotional as she accepted one of the night's most coveted awards, calling herself the granddaughter of an immigrant. It was a star-studded night in California with performances from Sabrina Carpenter and Justin Bieber. Record of the year went to SZA and Kendrick Lamar, who also took home the award for Best Hip-Hop Album. Lamar, now the most awarded hip-hop artist in Grammys history. Lady Gaga won for Best Vocal Album for Mayhem, while Jelly Roll won Best Country Album, and Lola Young took home her first Grammy for Best Pop Solo Performance for her hit song, Messy. Good Monday morning. I'm Joe Fryer. Savannah is on assignment right now on Morning News Now. Snap out of it. America's deadly deep freeze stretching into yet another work week comes on the heels of a bitter bomb cyclone snowstorm that sent oceanfront homes in the Carolinas careening into the Atlantic. The record lows that could be knocking at your front door as thousands wake up to one more day without power. Also this morning, we're diving into a massive new document drop from the Department of Justice. Millions of files related to Jeffrey Epstein made public. That includes this newly released interview between MAGA mastermind Steve Bannon and Epstein himself, taped just months before the convicted sex offender's suicide back in 2019. Despite this latest deluge, survivors of Epstein's crimes are fuming at the DOJ. We'll tell you why in a moment. Plus, nations across Southeast Asia on high alert. The World Health Organization flagging 2 cases of a rare and highly contagious virus, more lethal than COVID, in India late last week. What you need to know about Nipah and how authorities abroad are working to stop the spread before it starts. And later this morning, the Hollywood news still stunning the world of entertainment and beyond. I'm going to bring you a look back at the one-of-a-kind career of the late Catherine O'Hara, a woman who made us laugh, cry, and sometimes cry laughing for decades. Let's begin this morning with another week of brutal winter weather that just won't let up. From frigid temperatures to another round of snow down south, communities are struggling to get back on track. Nationwide, the death toll has now soared into the triple digits. We're going to get a look at the forecast in just a moment. First, let's get the latest from NBC News correspondent Emily Ikeda, who's braving the cold here in New York City. Emily, good morning.
Hey there, the snow is tapering off in most of the country, but it's the lingering dangerous cold that is now officials' biggest concern. A bitter 16 degrees with a wind chill of 4 here in New York City, while parts of the south from Danville, Virginia to Miami, Florida are waking up to potential record lows.
Another blast of bitter cold sweeping the nation. Over the weekend, a monster bomb cyclone snowstorm dumping nearly 2 feet of snow in the Carolinas. Oceanfront homes collapsing into the sea, and the near whiteout conditions making for treacherous driving.
This is no joke.
The National Guard called in to help clear the roads after a minor collision snowballed into a major 100-car pileup on a highway in North Carolina. And this is the stunning moment a train slammed into a semi-truck stuck on the tracks. Thankfully, the driver was able to escape in time. The monster storm, a 1-2 punch for many residents, still cleaning up from another major winter wallop just 1 week ago. The death toll rising to almost 120 people nationwide. Now, more than 60 million Americans facing cold weather alerts and potential record lows in 7 states across the typically warm South.
I don't know how to act in this weather.
A rare sight in the Sunshine State, snow flurries and a cold front. The lingering freeze comes as over 100,000 Americans remain without heat or power, some for over a week. Airports also working to get back on track. Plows clearing snow from tarmacs after thousands of more flights were canceled or delayed over the weekend.
I thought I was being smart and chose an earlier flight.
But in the Northeast, freezing winds up to 60 miles an hour. didn't stop these skaters from playing hockey on the beach along the Jersey Shore.
And officials today reminding people to always clear off the roof of their vehicles to prevent any ice or snow from flying off and hitting other cars on the road. Many states actually have so-called ice missile laws that require drivers to do so or face some potentially hefty fines. Back to you.
All right, Emily, thank you. Staying with weather today, of course, is Groundhog Day. Punxsutawney Phil emerged earlier this morning with his big yearly prediction. Straight from Gobbler's Knob in Pennsylvania. Meteorologist Andrea Romero joins us with her own in-depth outlook, which I rely on much more
Thank you,
than the
Joe.
groundhog. Any relief in sight, Andrea?
Well, we are seeing a little bit of relief from the extreme cold temperatures we had compared to last week. But as far as Punxsutawney Phil's forecast, well, he said we're going to have 6 more weeks of winter. So we'll see if that comes true or not. The cold weather alerts today, though, are stretching all the way from the northeast into the southeast. We have those cold advisories, and we even have that extreme cold warning over parts of the mid-Atlantic and in Florida. So looking at extreme cold that we're experiencing right now, 12 degrees in Buffalo, but it feels 1 degree below 0. We also have 10 degrees in Cincinnati, 23 degrees in Chicago. But of course, where we're feeling it the most is in the Sunshine State. We're expecting many record low temperatures today. Temperatures right now, 36 degrees in Tampa, but it feels like 30 in Daytona, 29, 26 in Jacksonville, and in Fort Myers, 34. And even down in Miami, we're looking at 41 degrees right now, with it feels like in the 30s. The continued cold weather will continue, but it won't be as harsh tomorrow. Temperatures will be like 5 to 10 degrees below average compared to the 10 to 20 that we're expecting today. However, on Wednesday, temperatures will be around the freezing point in New York, but then that frigid cold air returns, and that'll be for the end of the week. We're looking at temperatures that will be dropping highs back into the 20s along the East Coast. So we can look now as far as precipitation. We don't have too much. We have a couple of February systems we're looking at. First, we have a cold front that's crossing the Central Plains today. It's going to bring the chance of some light snow into the Great Lakes and the Appalachians. However, there's a little system that will be working its way through the southeast, and this one has a little bit more of a punch, and that's going to be combining some of that Gulf moisture with that cold air from the north. Could bring us some snow. Parts of the Ohio Valley can see 1 to 3 inches. Into West Virginia, a little bit of rain in the south that will continue and linger into possibly Wednesday. So that's what we're looking as far as the precipitation. The West Coast is nice and warm.
Good for them. I mean, the groundhog didn't see its shadow and came out. I'm surprised, though, it didn't like feel the cold and I'm standing here.
Well, I'm thinking that he stayed inside mostly because of the cold temperature. Not so much that's not what scared him. The shadow didn't scare him. It was the cold temperature.
Right, Andrea, thank you so much. Appreciate it. New details are emerging about the Jeffrey Epstein investigation after the latest release of documents Friday. We're learning more about just who and what was in the millions of files posted by the Department of Justice, including a never-before-seen interview with Epstein himself. NBC News Now anchor Hallie Jackson has the latest. Hallie?
Hey there, good morning. These documents show Jeffrey Epstein's connections with many rich and powerful people, as some of Epstein's abuse survivors now say they're frustrated. Some private information was not properly redacted as they fight for accountability. New fallout this morning from the Justice Department's release of millions of pages of Epstein documents.
This is the most documents that we have seen released so far in history, but it is not good enough.
The files showing a web of connections between Jeffrey Epstein and powerful people throughout the world, including references to former Prince Andrew, seen here kneeling over an unidentified woman. No details were provided about the circumstances of the photo. The UK Prime Minister now calling on Andrew to testify in front of Congress, saying Epstein's victims have to be the first priority. Andrew was stripped of his royal titles last year because of his Epstein ties, but has long vigorously denied allegations of abuse and misconduct related to Epstein. The DOJ also posted, then temporarily removed without explanation, a spreadsheet of complaints made to the FBI, including unverified allegations about both President Trump and former President Bill Clinton. The FBI determined some of those tips were not credible or corroborated. President Trump and former President Clinton have denied any wrongdoing, and they have not been accused by authorities. The Deputy Attorney General saying Sunday multiple well-known people were in that spreadsheet.
There have been hundreds of calls made to the FBI where allegations are made by either anonymous individuals or people who are very quickly determined to not be credible.
The DOJ's files also include multiple images and video, including of Epstein speaking with MAGA strategist Steve Bannon in 2019, just months before Epstein's arrest and suicide.
The devil himself said, I'm going to exchange some dollars for your child's life.
Do you think you're the devil himself?
No, but I do have a good mirror.
Bannon, who's not accused of wrongdoing and was never publicly part of any investigation into Epstein, has not responded to NBC's request for comment. Now, some survivors say they're frustrated with the way some private information was not redacted in the release. Danny Bensky tells us she was infuriated to see her own name, address, and phone number in the files.
I thought it was carelessness, and then I went to incompetence, and now it feels a bit deliberate. I feel like the Department of Justice has really made us feel unsafe.
And now the lawyers for some survivors want a federal court to have the DOJ take down the Epstein files site until the redaction issue can be addressed. The Deputy Attorney General has said the DOJ immediately rectifies any missing redactions when they're notified, and that those errors account for only a tiny fraction of the total materials. Back to you.
All right, Hallie, thank you. Lawmakers are back in Washington today, hoping to push through a funding bill that would reopen large chunks of the government amid a partial shutdown. The holdup comes after the Senate changed the package because of concerns over President Trump's mass deportation operation and the deaths of 2 American citizens during those ICE operations in Minneapolis. NBC News Chief Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles joins us now. So, Ryan, does it seem likely this partial shutdown is going to last much longer? I mean, what do we expect today?
Obviously, this is another example of how nothing is easy in the United States Congress. It does appear that they are on a path to get the government back open, at least by tomorrow at the latest. But there are some potential hiccups along the way. The issue here is that a bipartisan majority certainly agrees with 5 of the 6 appropriations packages that they're set to vote on. But it's that 6th leg, the Department of Homeland Security budget, that is where there is a holdup. The goal here is that this package will split those off. The 5 appropriations bills will be funded through the end of the year. And that 6th, the Department of Homeland Security budget, will have a 2-week window where they can negotiate some reforms around the president's immigration raids. At this point, they feel as though the votes are there to make it happen. But as everything goes with Congress, we won't know until the voting actually starts, which will be likely sometime tomorrow, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, what is it Democrats want out of all this, and what's, like, I guess, realistic?
So the Democrats have very specific demands around this. Just as an example, they want all DHS and ICE officers wearing body cams. They want them to adhere to a uniform code of conduct. They also think they should stop wearing masks. And it's not clear that the administration is willing to go that far. They are willing to talk about reforms, but the way those reforms are implemented is part of the question. And Democrats are making it clear, unless they get what they want, they will continue to vote no. Listen to what Ro Khanna said on Meet the Press this weekend.
I'm a firm no, and I'm going to advocate with colleagues that they vote no. I just don't see how in good conscience Democrats can vote for continuing ICE funding when they're killing American citizens, when there's no provision to repeal the tripling of the budget. I hope my colleagues will say no.
So the issue here is that while they're quibbling with the Department of Homeland Security, the way that this bill was packaged all together, it also includes 5 other spending packages, including the Pentagon, the IRS, the Department of Transportation, are all part of this. So if they vote no just to send a message on DHS, that could continue to have about 70% of the government shut down. The question is, will Democrats be willing to go there, and do Republicans have enough votes to make it happen?
And Ryan, we know the shutdown is keeping you incredibly busy, but while we have you, the president also announced plans to shut down the Kennedy Center for renovation for a while. What are we learning about this?
Yeah, this is a shutdown of a completely different matter, Joe. But the president announcing last night on social media that he believes the renovations necessary at the Kennedy Center will necessitate the facility being shut down for 2 years. That shutdown would start on July 4th to coincide with the country's 250th anniversary. But skeptics are pointing out that this comes at a time where there's been huge backlash to the changes that the president and the board that he has put in have made to the Kennedy Center, including attempting to put his name on the Kennedy Center. A number of high-profile performers have backed out. Their ticket sales are at the lowest levels they've been in some time. Many arguing that perhaps this is just an effort to save face by the president. Regardless, he controls the board. The board has the final say. And it does look like this performing arts venue that is kind of renowned all across the world could be shut down for a 2-year period in the very near future, Joe.
All right, Ryan, thank you so much. This morning, a Minneapolis preschooler is finally back home after he was detained alongside his father by immigration agents. A federal judge ordered the release of 5-year-old Liam Conejo Ramos and his dad on Saturday while their immigration case proceeds through the courts. They're being held at an ICE detention center in Texas. Last month, viral images showing the boy in a blue bunny hat and Spider-Man backpack sparked international outrage. He was photographed when he was taken into custody on his way home from school. The Department of Homeland Security and Liam's mother dispute what happened during what DHS describes as a targeted operation. They say Liam was abandoned and that the child's mother refused to claim custody of him even after officers assured her that she would not be arrested. But Liam's mother claims federal agents tried to use her son as bait. DHS says the father requested that Liam stay with him. NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa joins us now from Minneapolis with the latest out of Minnesota. Maggie, good morning. The judge who ordered Liam and his father's release blasted the Trump administration's handling of immigration enforcement in Minnesota. What did he have to say about it, and what more do we know about Liam's homecoming?
Sure, Joe. We'll start with the homecoming. We have these new images, these new videos and photos of Liam and his dad, and these are the images people here have just waited for weeks to see. They're walking out of that South Texas detention facility. It's the Dilley facility. It's gotten a lot of press lately. On Saturday night, they flew home yesterday, smiling as they traveled. They're home now. Their family has asked for privacy, but we did talk to Liam's school superintendent, who, remember, kind of was the one to raise, along with his teacher and principal, initial alarms about this case. And she said she spoke to mom, and they're just so relieved to have him home. They have no plans on when he'll return to school or see friends or anything like that. They just want to hunker down as a family in the wake of all of this. In the meantime, as you say, that federal judge absolutely blasting not just the detainment of Liam, but the administration's tactics overall, writing in his ruling on Saturday, quote, "The case," meaning Liam's case, "has its genesis in the, his words, ill-conceived and incompetently implemented government pursuit of daily deportation quotas, apparently even if it requires traumatizing children." And as we talked about, Liam's case has become, Joe, such a bellwether that superintendent stressed, in her words, it's bittersweet because they have other students and other parents inside that same detention facility who haven't gotten the same press. But again, they're relieved to see this one 5-year-old make it home.
Yeah, and we're going to talk more about that school in just a moment here, Maggie. We're also learning about a potential measles outbreak at that Texas family detention center where Liam and his father were being held. What are the details of that?
Yeah, this was really interesting. So Liam and his dad were escorted out of the facility by Texas Congressman Joaquin Castro. And in the hours after they were released, Castro's chief of staff said in court filings that while they were there and while they've been working on Liam's case, ICE informed them there's a growing measles outbreak inside the Dilley Center, inside this family and children detention center. And so we reached out to, after seeing that, DHS, and they confirmed, they say they have 2 cases at this point. They also said that they have ceased all movement within the facility and quarantined both those who are infected and those who they believe may have come into contact with the infected. And Joe, remember last week, Castro said that Liam himself didn't seem well. So we reached out to the family attorney about this latest headline. So far, no response. It's worth noting DHS said that a pediatrician had examined Liam, found no medical concerns, but obviously just incredibly concerning on a number of levels.
No doubt. And Maggie, over the weekend, a different federal judge rejected a request from state and local officials in Minnesota to end this massive deployment of thousands of agents to the state. The judge did seem to side with Minnesota officials, saying in a ruling, quote, "There is evidence that ICE and CBP, that's Customs and Border Patrol agents, have engaged in racial profiling, excessive use of force, and other harmful actions." So with that in mind, why did she say she was allowing it to continue?
Yeah, it was a real threading of the needle. One thing that she said was, number one, part of the state's argument was that they believed that the federal government was doing this to force Minnesota, Minneapolis, sanctuary states, cities to change their laws. She wasn't quite buying that argument. And perhaps more importantly, she wrote that there's been a recent court precedent that says that any kind of court injunction to stop the federal government from enforcing federal law can do a lot of damage to the federal government. So you're right. She didn't deny that in her mind, or based on the evidence she saw, that these things are happening, these problems are arising, but she didn't see it as quite enough to stop the operation overall. Local and state officials, Joe, saying that they'll keep fighting this in the courts.
All right, Maggie Vespa, thank you so much. Now, the Trump administration's immigration crackdown in Minneapolis is having a major impact on one elementary school in neighboring Columbia Heights. As we just mentioned, the school says 3 of its students, that does include Liam Conejo Ramos, and at least 25 parents have been detained by immigration agents. Jana Shortle from our NBC affiliate, KARE 11 in the Twin Cities, spoke with the principal at that school and brings us that story.
Valley View Elementary School, Columbia Heights, Minnesota. Student population 570. More than half of them are Hispanic or Latino.
What have the last 2 weeks been like for you?
It's been chaotic for our whole staff. You know, when I come to school in the morning, I might take a lap around the block with my truck first to see who's sitting there. When we go to dismiss kids, we're looking up and down the block.
Before the first bell rings to let the kids in, a principal checking the perimeter is a good way to set the scene for Minnesota in 2026.
Your sense of security is gone.
And for this principal, it's not coming from paranoia. It's coming from the reality of what his school community has gone through for the last 9 days. It started with Liam.
Yep.
Liam was taken January 11th with his father. Both of them, their lawyer and this principal, say were seeking asylum and had their papers.
His cubby is still there. His seat is still there at the table where he sits, but he's one of many. Yesterday we had 2 students that mom was abducted outside of a courthouse that she reported for her monthly or weekly check-in because of her asylum status, and she was taken right out of there. Those 2 students were in our building. We had to bring them down because mom's down at the Whipple building requesting that we bring them down to her.
You had to take 2 kids to their mother who was being detained.
Detained, yep.
If that sounds painful, you should know Jason did it because in addition to the students of his now taken into custody, he has even more students going home to half a home. Because parents, he says, have been taken.
So now we have single-parent families trying to manage on a single income to stay here.
How many families?
25. To this date, it's 25 families. And I'm
in this school?
In this school alone. And that's a mom or a dad. I'm not counting grandpa and grandmas. I'm not counting aunts and uncles. We know we have multi-family units that are housing, but this is just parents.
For those who are left but are afraid to bring their kids, that's about 60 families, there is food stacked in the hallway where kids are typically walking. The staff and volunteers deliver that food every week. And those deliveries also reveal loss.
We also didn't find families. Families have fled that we had no contact with. I don't know if they left the state, left the city. They just ghosted us. We can't get a hold of them. So we don't know what happened to them.
Valley View Elementary School has 3 less students, at least 25 less parents, and a growing sense of dread because they are seeing no reduction in force or let up in fear.
It's been heavier than ever with just the number of ICE agents going back and forth that's in our neighborhoods. It has not slowed down one bit.
And our thanks to Jana Shortle for that report. We have some news from inside the NBC News family to bring you. The mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie has been reported missing in Arizona. The Pima County Sheriff's Department said on Sunday that Nancy Guthrie was last seen in her home on Saturday night shortly before 10 p.m. She was reported missing by her family around noon on Sunday. Search and rescue teams are out looking for Nancy, who is 84 years old. The sheriff said there were aspects of the scene at her home that caused grave concern. Authorities say they do not know if foul play is a factor in her disappearance, but they are not ruling it out at this time. A statement from the Guthrie family says, quote, "We can confirm this is a missing persons case, and the family is working closely with local law enforcement. They're urging people to contact the Pima County Sheriff's Department if they have any information, adding they are grateful for the outreach, prayers, and thoughts. We, of course, are thinking of and praying for our colleague Savannah and her entire family." More to come here on this hour of Morning News Now, including the Lone Star Democrat who just punched his ticket to Texas's legislature over the weekend. A stunning special election win in a district that was handily won by President Trump just over a year ago. First, after the break, Nipah virus concerns sweeping across Southeast Asia this morning. The race there to stop the spread of a sickness reported to be deadlier than COVID. That's next. We are back now with the latest on the escalating tensions between the U.S. and Iran. President Trump says he is weighing possible military action against Iran, but the country's supreme leader is warning that any attack by the U.S. would spark a regional war in the Middle East. NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel is inside Iran this morning and joins us now with the latest. Richard, good morning.
Here in Tehran, the mood is extraordinarily tense. Many people are just now coming back out onto the streets. Some shops are open, others are closed. This country experienced a nearly 3-week total internet blackout that cut off the country from the world and also cut off Iranians from themselves. It made it extraordinarily difficult to do business, to communicate, to find out how people are doing amid nationwide protests and a government crackdown that killed thousands of people. Many Iranians openly worry that this country could face a new conflict with Israel and the United States, separately or together, and they worry that that conflict could come almost at any minute. Iran's supreme leader, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, said that if there is another war, if this country is attacked by the United States or Israel, that this time it will certainly become a regional war. Responding, President Trump said that if there is no deal and Iran doesn't agree to the terms of a deal that the U.S. is seeking, then the world will see if the Ayatollah, the supreme leader, was correct, suggesting that the U.S. could use military force. The government here clearly wants a deal. The Iranian president just earlier today authorized senior Iranian officials to conduct negotiations, and 2 government officials told me that they want a deal and they believe that Iran can reach a deal if the scope of the deal is limited to Iran's nuclear program. President Trump has said that he wants to reach a deal in which Iran doesn't have any nuclear weapons. Iran says it can reach that deal, but what they worry about is the parameters of the deal expanding, with additional caveats, additional clauses being added in order to sabotage the deal before it even takes place. Here in Iran, many people are nervous. They don't know what to expect. They are afraid of the security forces. Security forces have now fully regained control of the streets. We've seen some extra security forces positioned at key intersections here in Tehran to make sure that people don't go out again and try and protest and bring down the government.
Richard, thank you so much. Staying overseas, we've got an update after 2 cases of a potentially deadly virus were identified in India. The World Health Organization said Friday there is a low risk of the deadly Nipah virus spreading from India. The virus has no vaccine, a fatality rate between 40 and 75%, and it spreads through animals and humans. Officials in Thailand, Singapore, Hong Kong, and Malaysia did add extra airport screenings to stop the spread last week, but the WHO said it is not recommending restrictions on travel or trade at this time. NBC News international correspondent Janice Mackey-Frayer joins us now with the details. Janice, good morning. Obviously, I don't need to tell you, we all still have trauma from COVID 6 years ago. What more should we know about this virus? And just remind us how this all started last week.
Joe, Nipah is transmitted from animals. This we know. It's usually pigs or fruit bats or through food that's been contaminated by them. It doesn't jump easily to humans, but when it does, it hits like the flu. But it can lead to pneumonia or, in the worst cases, inflammation of the brain. 2 cases were detected in India, both healthcare workers at the same private hospital in West Bengal. As you mentioned, the virus has a fatality rate of up to 75%, so higher than COVID, and there's no vaccine for Nipah. So authorities in India are taking no chances with this. They've dealt with these outbreaks before. They believe they have this one contained, and that's why the WHO says it's unlikely that Nipah is going to spread outside of India. Joe?
So, Janice, why is the World Health Organization saying that the Nipah virus has a low risk of spreading from India, and what steps have been put in place there?
Well, authorities in India have quarantined nearly 200 people who may have come into contact with the 2 people who were infected. As of today, no other suspected cases have been reported in India or in any country. The WHO says the fatality rate has a lot to do with the country's capacity to trace and treat those infected. But as you said, naturally, when people hear that there's a contagious virus in Asia, they're going to worry because the COVID pandemic wasn't that long ago. And so it's why the U.S. officials and CDC, they're still watching closely. There are no travel or trade restrictions that have been announced by any country. Again, the WHO is saying for now, the risk of it spreading globally is low. Joe?
Janice, thank you so much. Coming up, a political stunner that is shaking up state leadership in Texas. When Morning News Now returns, the Lone Star Democrat who just staged a massive special election upset over the weekend in a ruby-red district that overwhelmingly went for President Trump back in 2024. So who better to break down the results and what it could mean for the red and the blue going into this year's midterms than our own Steve Kornacki joins us from the big board next. We're back now with a closer look at what's making news in the world of politics this morning, starting with the first big test for New York's new mayor, Zohran Mamdani. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Julie Sirkin joins us with more. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning, Joe. Good to see you again. We begin in New York City. That's where Zohran Mamdani is facing his first big test as mayor of the largest city in the country after a foot of snow covered the streets. 14 people have died due to freezing temperatures. And so Mamdani announced the opening of single-room shelter units for the city's homeless. Look, 4 days before the storm hit, Mamdani met with his top officials to prepare. He mentioned to his team that his predecessors, from Mayor Michael Bloomberg to Eric Adams, all botched snowstorm responses, and he didn't want to repeat their mistakes. Mamdani knows his response to the storm would be scrutinized, so he even picked up a shovel himself, making stops in Brooklyn and Queens to help clear the snow. Now, it's only the beginning of 2026, but we're already talking about this year's midterm elections. And get this, groups tied to cryptocurrency and artificial intelligence have millions to spend. The most prominent pro-crypto groups closed out 2025 with nearly $194 million on hand. And a pro-AI group has almost $40 million in its campaign account. This signals that these groups are planning to spend big, just like they did in the 2024 elections. In many cases, successfully sending pro-crypto and pro-AI candidates to Washington. The groups support candidates in both parties, Joe. And staying in D.C., President Trump on Friday signed an executive order paving the way for the first IndyCar street race in the nation's capital. Trump says drivers will navigate a track around the national monuments in celebration of America's 250th birthday. This is set to take place in August. Members of his cabinet will design a race route within the next 2 weeks for the event that'll be known as the Freedom 250 Grand Prix of Washington, D.C. And that is a look at what is making news in politics this morning. Joe?
All right, Julie, thank you so much. Sticking with politics, a Texas Democrat just pulled off a massive upset in a state Senate special election. Taylor Ramett defeated Republican candidate Lee Wambsgans in a district around Fort Worth that President Trump won in the presidential election just over a year ago. Ramett will now hold the state Senate seat until the end of the term, which ends early next year. For more on this, we have NBC News chief data analyst Steve Kornacki at the big board to break it all down for us. Steve, good morning. Just walk us through why Ramett's victory is such a huge upset and just a big swing in that specific district.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what it is. It's a combination of the fact that it's a big swing here relative to 2024, and it is for Democrats an outright victory here in what is still a very Republican part of Texas, or certainly of Tarrant County, which is near Fort Worth, which is where this district is. So you see, it's a 15-point win for the Democratic candidate over the Republican. You say Trump carried the district last year. He did. Trump's margin in this same district was 17 points. So you can say that's a swing of 32 points right there. Now, I will say, we have been monitoring this since Trump came back to office at the start of last year, and we've been seeing swings like that of 15, 20, 25, 30 points in state legislative elections, in small special elections, like this one was held on a Saturday night at the end of January. We have been seeing swings like that since Trump came back to office. I think this one gets more dramatic, as I say, because the Democrats actually ended up flipping and winning this district, which puts more of a headline on it, certainly.
Yeah, so I guess that begs my next question. How much is this a bellwether for the November election, where you have congressional districts, statewide Senate races? Could this be a warning sign for Republicans running for office this year?
Yeah, look, I think it is, especially because we have been seeing this since Trump came back to office, and we saw this in Trump's first term in the run-up to that 2018 midterm when Trump and the Republicans really took it on the chin in his first term. So certainly I think it does speak to a broad climate that's unfavorable to Republicans right now. But I do think we have to say there's something else that's probably at work here. And it's another thing that we've been seeing since Trump came back to office. Look at the total number of votes here. It's about 54,000 and change for the Democrat, 40,000 for the Republican. You're looking at about 94,000 votes that were cast in this district on Saturday. Do you know what the number was in 2024? It was 387,000. So that's a huge, huge drop-off in the turnout. Again, this is a special election at the end of January, not much else going on. So really only the most hardcore interested people turned out. And this is something else we've been seeing. Here's some polling from Echelon Insights here asking Democrats and Republicans, are you going to be extra motivated to turn out for a special election to send a message about national politics? A lot more Democrats. Democrats said they'd be extremely or very motivated. That's 89% of Democrats say they're extremely or very motivated for special elections like this one in Texas. The number for Republicans is a lot smaller. The combination there of extremely and very motivated is only 68. That's a pretty big energy imbalance. Democrats a lot more motivated with the idea of going out for any and every election to send a message about national politics than Republicans are. So you look at this race in Texas, you see that huge turnout drop-off relative to 2024. You layer on top of it the Democrats are much more motivated than Republicans for special elections. I think that's a big ingredient here, and that's something I think it's not going to be really as much a dynamic, nearly as much a dynamic when you get to November in the midterm election where the turnout is just much higher.
We'll be talking to you a lot more between now and then. Steve, thank you so much. Welcome back. Let's get you some money news this morning. Looks like gold and silver's fairy tale run on Wall Street is hitting, well, a wall. NBC News business and economy reporter Allie Canal has more on that and other financial headlines with your Money Minute. Good morning, Allie.
Hey, good morning, Joe. That's right. Gold and silver are tumbling after quite the epic run. Losses extended into Monday after a sharp pullback that began late last week. Both metals had hit records just days ago, but some investors cashed out, and a stronger U.S. dollar also cooled the rally, making gold and silver more expensive for buyers outside of the U.S. And from safe havens to big spending, Oracle is going all in on AI. The software company says it plans to raise up to $50 billion to expand its AI cloud and data center capacity. The goal is to meet demand from tech heavyweights like Meta and NVIDIA, but it also underscores just how costly the AI build-out has become. And a box office surprise for Melania Trump's new documentary. The Amazon film, which follows the 20 days leading up to President Donald Trump's second inauguration, pulled in $7 million domestically in its opening weekend. That's above earlier forecasts of around $5 million, according to ComScore. That makes Melania the biggest non-music documentary debut in more than a decade, with data showing a strong turnout from women, older viewers, and rural theaters, even as critical reviews were mostly negative. And our NBC entertainment correspondent Chloe Malas went to this premiere in D.C. She spoke to the First Lady, who said this film is meant for everyone. So it'll be interesting to see how the movie continues to perform and who ultimately comes out to see this.
Exactly. You could also do a documentary on the reviews, because some of them are quite scathing. So,
exactly. All right. So a lot of divisive reviews here, but people came out opening weekend.
All right, Allie, thank you so much.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.